In January 2024, a quadriplegic named Noland Arbaugh became the first human to receive a Neuralink brain implant. Within weeks, he was playing chess and controlling a cursor entirely with his thoughts. By 2026, he had logged thousands of hours on a mind-controlled computer. This is not science fiction. It is the first real breakthrough in a race to build keyboards you never have to touch. But how close are we really? An estimated 5.4 million Americans live with some form of paralysis. For these individuals, a sudden injury or progressive disease severs the physical connection between the brain and the limbs, stripping away the ability to use hands and arms. This loss does more than restrict physical movement. It limits digital independence, communication speed, and basic privacy in an increasingly online world. While modern assistive technologies provide a bridge, they demand heavy compromises. Eye tracking systems cause severe ocular fatigue and require constant recalibration. Voice control struggles in noisy environments and forces users to broadcast private thoughts. Adapted keyboards and switches suffer from high latency and low precision. Every existing option relies on utilizing remaining muscular function, working around biological blockages rather than resolving them. Direct neural input offers a fundamentally different path. Instead of forcing a damaged body to operate a physical interface, it aims to bypass broken spinal pathways entirely. By reading motor commands directly from the brain, this approach attempts to restore digital agency where it begins, at the source of thought itself. To bypass a damaged spinal cord, the N1 system intercepts motor signals directly at the cortical level. The hardware centers around a hermetically sealed 25mm coin-shaped device. This implant sits flush within a hollowed-out portion of the skull, entirely beneath the scalp. Unlike older medical interfaces, this design is completely self-contained, using wireless inductive charging to power an internal battery and eliminating the risk of percutaneous wires passing through skin. Beneath this protective biocompatible casing lies a custom mixed signal application-specific integrated circuit, ASIC. This microchip manages the processing pipeline. It connects to 64 ultrafine, flexible polyamide threads, containing a total of 1,024 individual recording electrodes. Because these threads are thinner than a human hair and must be inserted into the motor cortex without damaging blood vessels, manual neurosurgery is impossible. Instead, a custom insertion platform, the R1 surgical robot, automates the procedure. Using real-time optical imaging and automated depth tracking, the R1 inserts each thread in under 2 seconds with sub-millimeter precision. Once positioned, the electrodes detect extracellular action potentials, the tiny electrical spikes of firing neurons. The on-chip ASIC amplifies and digitizes these raw voltage fluctuations while consuming less than 10 milliwatts of power to prevent local tissue heating. This digital data is then broadcast wirelessly via a Bluetooth low-energy link to an external receiver. From there, software takes over. A Kalman filter decoder analyzes the timing and frequency of these neural spikes, translating high-dimensional activity into smooth, two-dimensional cursor velocities and clicks in real time. The brain's intent becomes digital action, decoded without a single muscle moving. The quest to link brains directly with computers is defined by a hard physical constraint. The closer electrodes get to active neurons, the clearer the recorded signals, but the riskier the surgery. Neuralink represents the extreme end of this spectrum, placing electrodes directly inside brain tissue for maximum data resolution, accepting the highest level of surgical invasiveness. Other engineering teams are betting on less hazardous paths. Synchron bypasses open brain surgery entirely with its stentrode device. Delivered through the jugular vein using a catheter, this flexible mesh unfolds inside a blood vessel adjacent to the motor cortex. It eliminates the need to cut through the skull, though the vessel wall acts as a barrier that reduces signal quality and limits control to simple digital selections. Precision Neuroscience occupies a middle ground with its Layer 7 device. This ultra-thin film sits on the brain surface rather than penetrating it, sliding in through a tiny skull incision. It sits flush against the motor cortex, providing a larger recording area than single penetrating threads while avoiding the physical trauma of direct brain penetration. This design offers a compromise, seeking to capture high-density signals without damaging delicate cortical tissue. Meanwhile, Paradromics secured regulatory clearance in November 2025 to begin a long-term speech restoration trial. Their high-channel interface records broadband neural activity directly from the cortex, targeting complex language decoding while still requiring a traditional craniotomy. No single design has won the field. Every approach represents a stark compromise between biological safety and data bandwidth, leaving researchers to balance the surgical dangers against the raw fidelity of the connection. The transition of brain-computer interfaces from laboratory experiments to functional clinical tools is documented by hard performance data. When Noland Arbaugh first operated a computer cursor using his N1 implant, he achieved control speeds that rivaled decades of academic research. This was not a fleeting success. Even after early physical challenges with thread retraction, engineering adjustments proved effective. Neuralinks. February 2026 telepathy update reported that 18 of 20 subsequent participants experienced stable, high-quality signal transmission following refinements to the insertion depth and hardware anchoring. This progress extends far beyond a single company. For over 2 decades, the BrainGate Consortium has systematically demonstrated that intracortical implants can do more than move an on-screen cursor. Their clinical trials have enabled paralyzed participants to operate robotic limbs with multiple degrees of freedom, type messages at functional speeds, and steer motorized wheelchairs using only decoded motor intent. Today, the field is no longer confined to isolated academic labs. With companies like Synchron, Paradromics, and Neuralink actively supporting human-implanted patients in multi-site clinical trials, a competitive medical industry has emerged. Financial analysts estimate the global brain-computer interface market reached approximately $8 to $12 billion in 2026. This rapid commercial growth is driven not by consumer novelty, but by the urgent, measurable demand for therapeutic devices that restore basic autonomy to those who have lost it. Every currently approved human application for brain-computer interfaces remains strictly restricted to restoring basic motor function in cases of severe paralysis. The clinical reality requires a craniotomy, bringing immediate hazards of intracranial bleeding, infection, and physical tissue damage. During the initial human trial, mechanical brain movement caused roughly 85% of the ultra-thin polymer threads to retract from the cortex within weeks. While software patches and deeper surgical placements mitigated this specific failure, the incident highlighted the deep uncertainty surrounding long-term biocompatibility and device longevity inside living tissue. Even with stable signals, an enormous performance gap separates simple cursor control from the speed of a physical keyboard. Translating spatial intent into two-dimensional movement is vastly different from decoding complex language at 40 words per minute. Beyond hardware, early adoption introduces complex social questions. True ownership of neural data, vulnerability to wireless hacking, and potential coercion by employers or insurers remain completely unresolved. Navigating these institutional risks requires strict transparency. Interested viewers can examine the official clinical trial disclosures linked in the description below. The road ahead maps a clear divide between medical reality and consumer speculation. Near-term breakthroughs will focus strictly on restoring communication and mobility for paralyzed patients. In the medium term, clinical trials will advance toward closed-loop therapies for epilepsy and Parkinson's. True consumer augmentation remains a distant long-term horizon. Everyday mind control keyboards are likely decades away, while the first transformative gains belong to medicine now. This leaves a profound question. Would you personally implant a chip to control devices with your thoughts? Subscribe for more deep dives into the future of technology. While clinical implants are rewriting the limits of paralysis, the leap to consumer mind control remains bounded by major surgical risks. It leaves us with one final, deeply personal question. Would you implant a chip just to control your devices with your thoughts? Subscribe for more deep tech analysis.